Morena, kia ora koutou. I'm Cieraad and I'm talking today about light and dark, navigating night sky perceptions in New Zealand. And this is work undertaken with Jeff Delly in the front here. It's been great to, I guess, have an introduction already by the speakers before me, so I don't really need to go into this too much, but we all know that light at night extends our day into the darkness, and that allows us to do a lot of things that we would have otherwise not been able to. And so this is about play and work at night, but also perceptions and feelings of safety. But there's also benefits of darkness, and we know about these as well. It's about our own connection to the night sky. It's the rhythms of organisms, of all the living creatures around us and ourselves, and how that works really only in a predictable light and dark cycle. Now, we have a societal challenge, as has already been posed to us this morning. If we want to reduce the negative impacts that light has on the benefits of darkness, how do we do this, and how do we marry these two needs in a way? It's really quite tricky. We don't really understand very well what people think about the light at night and darkness at night. And so this study was really set to look at what New Zealanders value in light and dark at night. And in particular, from the Department of Conservation's point of view, does the physical setting of where people are, does that affect how they look and rate the importance of dark and light? And then ultimately, of course, with the aim to sort of better handle this balance and the trade-offs associated. Now, there's a series of surveys done around the world, and some pretty large ones as well. But almost all of them involve self-selected samples, so surveys sent out through social media, and some people do them, other people don't, which has issues to do with bias. There's not any one that I'm aware of that is nationally representative in terms of representing the nation's population in terms of age, gender, regions where people live, ethnicity. And importantly, almost all of them are conducted from a dark sky conservation sort of framework, which is fine for some purposes, but if you actually really want to get to what people value, you need to step away from how you frame a question. What do you think about light pollution? Okay, if that is in the first question, then people that are responding to that survey will answer the questions differently than if you frame that in a totally neutral way. So this is a newly developed instrument, drawing on some of that other work, but really framing it quite differently. And it includes a component on demographics and attitudes and belief systems, and also these context-dependent questions that I'll be talking about today. So this was done earlier this year. It's very much work in progress in terms of the analysis. It's an extremely rich data set, which we're only sort of starting to understand. But I'm really glad to be able to share the results, the first ones, with you here. And so this is representative of New Zealand as a population, with quota to represent how our population is made up, with 1,000 responses and a small margin of error. And it was conducted by an Ipsos online panel, so it's a commercial outfit, I guess, that does some of the polling for elections and things as well. And so we looked at these different functions of light at night. So this is about navigating, orientation, about traffic safety, crime, safety for crime, I guess, personal safety, light to extend productivity, to work into the night, to recreate, to do fun stuff, but also for decorating and advertising. And then for the dark side, we looked at now how important is your connection to the night sky, for that experience to connect to nature, your spiritual sort of sense when you connect under the dark sky, peace and solitude, but also how important is it for you about that the darkness has on the rhythm of people and organisms and living creatures around us, And of course, how important is it for you to see the night sky? And so we asked this question to everyone. So rate this, how important do you think? Is it not at all important for each one of them, all the way to extremely important? And then we were interested in this context, the different settings, the physical context. Where do you live and how important do you think these different things are? So this is moving from along an urban to rural gradient. These are little images my daughter drew for me to include here. So from the city centre all the way to the fields and the rural areas. And so a total of 1,000 people. And so we use mixed effects modelling for ordinal data, just for the Stetsy people amongst us, and accounted for those differences in age, in gender and ethnicity. And then we asked exactly that same question to all these people. Now, instead of thinking about all these different functions of light and dark where you live, think about them in a natural setting. How important would they be for you then? And a natural setting is a national park or a conservation area or reserve is how we pose that. Now, this is a little bit of a full-on graph, so I'll talk you through it. So down the bottom here, we've got this urban to rural gradient from the city centre all the way to the fields. And so there's a suburb and the peri-urban, sort of in between little rural villages and fields. This is where people live, these 1,000 people. And then this is the predicted, or the importance, how important are people with 0, not at all important, 4 important. And these colours here are representing the different functions of light in this case. And they're sort of ordered in the order how important people felt them. So crime was the most important function of light. Crime doesn't really matter where people live. And then the next one, the light for personal safety, the feeling of personal safety. Then for orientation, wayfinding, traffic safety, production, recreation, and people really didn't think that for decorative things it's not, and advertising is not really that important. Now what is interesting is that it doesn't really matter where people live. This ranking is just about the same. But we can also see that there is a reduction in how people rate how important all these things are if they live further away from the city. Now, when we ask these same people that live in these same places, how do you rate this then when you're thinking about a natural setting? So don't think about it in your neighbourhood, but think about it away in a natural setting. Then this is somewhat, these ratings are actually in a similar sort of ranking, in a similar order, but this not as clear. In this gradient along the urban to rural gradient is no longer visible, the drop-off. All of a sudden everything is fairly level. Now when we look at the same sort of graphs, but then for the dark functions, and we have now the rhythm of the animals around us, visibility to the night sky, the experience of the darkness, peace, and our own rhythms, and the connection to nature and the spiritual connection. So this is the order that people are ranking their importance of those different functions. As you can see, there's not anywhere near as clear a separation between all of those different functions, and there's not that gradient depending on where people live. And then when you look at that same sort of those importances of darkness in a natural setting, it's just about the same graph. Now, so just to summarise this a little bit, in terms of light functions, functions is a bit of a strange word, I should have said that before. You can talk about uses, purposes, benefits, all of those things. But there's a clear ranking when you're talking about the light. And the importance becomes less as you move out of the city. For dark, though, there's a lower importance overall. And so this is quite important. So before those, when we're talking about the safety, the ones at the top, the crime and safety were way up here, right? For the dark, they're actually all a bit lower. So we've got a bit of work to do. When Ruskin was saying we need to value the darkness, we've got a bit of work to do there. So there's an overall lower importance rating on dark functions, and they're much more similar across that gradient. Now, really, we know now that, well, I guess we already knew, but we've got a little bit more of an insight into light is important, but we want to protect the darkness. Now, how can we do this? The importance, those benefits are actually only relevant when people are present, right? So one of the other questions that we ask is which type of light is most appropriate for these different functions. So we're talking about, should it always be on, should it be on a motion sensor, or should you bring your own? And there are many more options, but the survey didn't allow us to test everything. This is something that we were able to do. And so it's really testing a level of permanency of that light source, and then we use a similar sort of approach to analyse that. And so when we're looking at light for traffic safety, 75% of respondents at most say they should always be on. Okay, let this sink in, right? 75% of people say they should be on. That's at least 25% of people in the city here that say that should be motion sensed. And actually, when you're coming out into the rural areas, it's way up to 50 or 70%. People say, well, we shouldn't have these lights on all the time for traffic safety. They should come on when we need them. For personal safety, less than 50% of the population says they should be on all the time. Actually, why don't we use motion sensing? And it doesn't really matter where we are. People are not too keen, except some people out in rural areas beyond rural towns that would be happy to bring their own devices. Now, when we're talking about orientation, so this is wayfinding, this is footpath lighting, those sort of things, less than half of the population of New Zealand thinks those lights should be on all the time. Right? This is major, this is big stuff. We can do stuff. We've got the social license here to do things. And for recreation, let's not bother with having it on all the time. It's a motion sense sort of setting. So I think these are profound results that really allow us to do something and move forward. And so it's been an exciting data set to play with, let's put it that way. So we've got this very strong support for motion sense controlling of lights across a series of different functions of light. And there's more support for transient forms of lighting as you move out, as people live further away from the city. But there's no clear differences between home and natural settings. Now, I'm going to change tack a little bit and say that I did say that we framed our survey neutrally, and we did, but we did ask a couple of questions that I know you all want to know. So what about dark skies? How important is preserving night dark skies to New Zealanders? So this is the proportion of participants that said, I don't agree at all, I slightly agree, I moderately agree. 50% of people, 50% of the nation says we totally or strongly agree that we should preserve the dark night sky. And then we asked them, okay, this was the last question, and actually there was one person who commented at the end of the survey saying, I didn't realise what you guys were on about in terms of which direction this was going to go and whether light was good or bad until I got to this last question. So that to me says thank you very much. I think we did all right. So thanks to whoever that person was for making me feel good. So artificial light at night is an important astronomy issue, environmental issue, energy issue, public health issue, or cultural issue. And to what extent do you agree with that? These are ranked in order of overall importance. So over the last decades, I guess, the astronomy story has been told very well. People feel that light at night is an issue for astronomy, and it is less of an issue, but still for environmental protection, I guess. People are also recognizing to some extent that there is an energy thing involved. Public health and a cultural issue is much lower. So, thank you. So what for dark skies? Sort of reversing back up my talk, I think we can say that there's strong support by the New Zealand public for preserving dark night skies. There's also strong support to actually not have lights on all the time, to work on, this urgency to scale and finding the darkness closer to home. We can get part of the way there by using this technology that we have a license for now. People agree that we should use more motion sensing. Now, also physical settings do matter, and so it depends on whether people live in the urban city centres or out in the rural areas in terms of how they rate light at night and how important that is to them, but not darkness. And so that is interesting, and actually not quite what we expected to find. So I think we've got a job to do there in terms of increasing people's understanding of the value of darkness and the importance of that, but also very much so that gradient towards the rural, where generally people are exposed to less light but still enjoy all those benefits and functions of light. We need to increase the awareness around the minimum requirements of lights to still receive that benefit. And that is something that I think is really an opportunity in addition to the motion sensing sort of technology. And also lastly, I think, like has already been hinted at a little bit, but I feel this piece of work really has changed the way that I look at it, that we need to change this narrative around from light versus dark. And light pollution is sort of helpful to some extent, but sometimes you need to frame things more neutrally, and you really need to think about this trade-off, or the balance, maybe, not so much trade-off, between light and dark. So I'll leave it there, and I'll change the title of our talk to Light and Dark.
Thanks, Ellen. I've been looking forward to those results. Thank you. Any questions? It's Michael.
Thanks, Ella. That was a wonderful talk. My name is Michael. I live in a little village of 3,000 people called Sumner, Christchurch. And if anybody wants to see a dark village, I would like to invite you to visit me in Sumner, because our village post-earthquake has disappeared. It's really a dark sky. I don't say dark sky, but dark village. Sumner is now that. We have an area which is called Scarborough Hill, and it's vanished. It's kind of hard to see it anymore. But I think it's very enjoyable for me. I love what's happened there. The glare's gone. And I will tell you that to walk from one house to another, you wouldn't do it without a torch all over Sumner. And I rather like that. But I question if the public does. Okay, that's one thing. There is wonderful darkness in that village, and I really love it. The other thing is, there is in Australia, my experience, especially there and here in New Zealand, that there is a rule for safety in driving that you want a 2-second visibility in front of you for safety when you're driving. Well, this is great on the Cook Highway, for example. It's dark as can be, that whole highway. They just don't eliminate the road, and so you depend strictly on your headlights. And that's fine if you slow down. You slow down, so you've got a 2-second visibility, but they do not slow down. So if you're going to have these dark highways, you're going to need a speed limit enforcement if you want that 2-second safety visibility.
Yeah, I guess there's this motion sensing thing, there are, still many options, but I think, there's lots of additional components that need to come into play to make it all work. But I think it's sort of the first piece of work in terms of how we can light, in particular, pathways and things that people seem extremely happy to not have lit all the time, but even for traffic safety. So I think, there's some additional work to be done for sure to make that all happen, and enforcement will be only one of them.
Oh, thank you very much indeed for that information, and I can vouch for what Michael has just said. What I would like to know is who has responded to the work and the publication, and have you had any media coverage for the outcomes of your work? Because I think it's absolutely essential, and if necessary, I can give you a couple of names of journalists that would be really interested to take you up.
Thanks, Margaret. Well, you are the first to hear, so feel privileged and onwards and upwards for this piece of work. So it's work in progress, but we, absolutely will be sharing it when it comes out in a sort of formal sense. Thank you.
Hi, Alan, over here. Yep. Well done.
Glaring lights.
Yeah, Steve Street. Hey, fantastic, and you've actually just answered the question. I was really wanting to get hold of the data in the report, so...
Not quite there yet.
Well done.
Thank you.
Great talk. At the beginning, you hit on one of the reasons people like to overlight at night, and that is crime and safety. Yet, for 30 years, I've been asking the lighting industry whenever I'm in a talk with lighting specialists, show me one study, just one, peer-reviewed, well-documented study that shows adding more lights decreases crime or increases safety. In 30 years, I've yet to see that study. It doesn't exist.
No.
In fact, England has done numerous studies, about 20 or 30 of them that I have in my own possession now, that shows cutting down the lighting, shielding the lighting, eliminating lighting on streets actually improved traffic safety and cut down on crime. We do interviews of criminals in prison. Why did you rob this place and not that place? Almost always it's because that one was well lit and basically is a neon sign saying, I'm afraid of you and I got lots of expensive things. That's where the criminals go. And the final thing is that there are not many studies in the US, but the Chicago Lighting Project, where they got a huge grant to light up many streets in Chicago to, quote, cut down on crime. University of Chicago decided to do a analysis of that to prove once and for all lighting cuts down crime. Much to their chagrin, wherever they put up the lights, the crime went up. Wherever the lights weren't put up, the crime went down. So again, I'm a kind of a data-driven person. If the lighting industry wants to sell things, they need to prove what they're actually doing.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good point, and this is also, I guess, one of my last points on the slide. There was, we need to really think about these minimum requirements for light, and sometimes that might be zero, but this is certainly not the case.
The color of light, so how the respondents feel in terms of the color of the light. Obviously, and also with the technologies of light, you've got the older technologies like the high pressure sodium, the new technology or LED.
Yeah.
So we consider that as well, perhaps?
We had a long wish list of questions in our survey, and not all of them made the cut. And so we did ask a question, which I didn't show here, but we asked people to what extent they felt that the use of light at night had changed in the neighbourhood, and how the colour had changed, and how the brightness of it had changed. But in terms of other colour sort of things we were not able, or technology, we weren't able to include it. It's pretty tricky to get these down to a size that people still feel comfortable pulling out, although you want to know all these things. Yeah. Only the start of a bigger piece of work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. I